Hi, everybody, and welcome to Budgeting 101. I'm Jay Copeland, and I'm going to be taking you through a 5-part series on budgeting, money management, and general financial literacy. I want to preface this presentation with the knowledge that it doesn't take anyone with any kind of experience to understand the concepts we're going to be going through here. In fact, the information is aimed at a very beginner level of getting into understanding your financial situation and how to manage your money as a post-secondary student or recent graduate who is trying to set themselves up for the best success possible in terms of paying off those student loans that you might have from the years of studying and getting yourself on track to make sure that you're financially secure as quickly as possible. So, today's session, we're going to be starting off with a foundation for money management, which always starts with a little bit of knowledge, which is tracking your spending. So a quick introduction to money management. It seems complicated and difficult and like it's a problem for the future, as we previously talked about. So what I need you to realize is getting a handle on your finances now is going to serve you better in the long run. The better you understand how your money is being spent, where it's coming from, and the areas in which you might be overspending or can create reductions in spending to have yourself, free up a little bit of extra cash for whatever you might need it for, is going to give you the foundation for financial success. So, with that understanding, knowledge is power. I'm sure you've heard it before. You can't begin to create a budget or spending plan that's going to be any kind of effect for you without first knowing where your money's going and how much you're spending on a regular basis. So to find this information out, you're going to need to track your spending. I recommend starting with a month. I would break this down on like a week by week basis to start, because ultimately you want to know what your expenses are for the year. You're going to come up with some costs that don't occur every month, like when your tuition is due is a larger payment that's not due every single month. But starting with the monthly spending is going to allow you to see what kind of costs you're incurring over the course of the year in areas that you can possibly make adjustments to. Tuition is going to be the cost of tuition. You know what that is well in advance, but your spending on like going out to eat versus say preparing your own food at home is going to be something you can manage on a monthly basis that frees up a little bit of extra cash to take care of those larger expenses. So there's a couple of ways we can do this. If you're old-fashioned, you can keep all of your receipts and use a spreadsheet to track your spending over the course of a month. You can download an app from your bank. I personally use TD MySpend. I have friends who have used BMO Money Logic. There's others out there. One that I did want to recommend in addition was Mint, which is an independent sort of financial tracker and budgeting app that people they're very happy with the performance of it. It allows you to sort of set savings goals and create plans for how you can create money or save in terms of the long run to reach those goals. But there's also features on it where these apps can send you push notifications on a daily basis to let you know, hey, you spent a little bit more yesterday than you would normally spend, or your spending right now is above your average spending, or even, hey, your spending for this time of the month is below your spending and you're doing well. So that way, if you spent a little bit extra this week earlier in the week when you're going into the weekend, that information is front of mind and you can say to yourself, okay, maybe I should plan for some, cheaper or free activities I can participate in. So my budget kind of and my spending evens out to a level that I'm normally at or comfortable with. Or, I want to reduce it so I can save up for a larger purchase. This is the time period where I can save some money and not and sort of bring that curve down a little bit so that I'm in the area where I am now suddenly spending less money than I would on average. Additionally, you can also review your bank statements. So if you use online banking, it's easy to open up your account and see what kind of transactions have taken place over the course of a month. And you can use this information to view months previous. So you don't necessarily have to start from scratch, but can just review your spending over the last month and figure out where to go from there as early as today. So check to see if your bank has a budget app, or look into Mint yourself, or there's other programs like it. It's just the one that seems to be the best reviewed. So yeah, let's get started on tracking that spending, because the following sort of 4 sessions are all going to rely on you knowing where you're at with your spending on sort of a monthly basis. So one thing we want you to do when you're looking at your spending is break it down into categories that you can find areas where you might be overspending in, or help to I want to say filter where you can identify areas that you might be able to reduce spending, save money, or ultimately, you're paying fees potentially that you might not need to pay. So some areas that I've suggested here are shopping. This could include anything like clothes, electronics, things that you purchase that aren't necessarily necessities. They're more wants than needs. I mean, yes, we all need clothes, but do we need the extra clothes? Are we purchasing just because we feel the need to gratify ourselves? Education, this includes like your tuition, any other fees that might be associated with education, things like your textbooks, or equipment that you might need for class. So these are fairly set fees. You're gonna need to purchase these in order to succeed. But there's still areas that we might be able to consider. So things like textbooks. Are you buying them new versus can you find them used somewhere and save a little bit of money there? Your groceries and eating out are sort of like 2 competing categories. So eating out is one of the most expensive areas for post-secondary students, especially if you're living in the Toronto area with a variety of delicious foods to participate in. It's a social activity. It's a great way to catch up with people, after class and make those connections. But it does cost you significantly more than it would if you were to buy your groceries and prepare your food on your own. So we want to create those categories and see where we're spending the majority of our money in terms of, what we're using to feed ourselves. Entertainment's going to be another category. This category is primarily your wants. So this is like your Netflix subscription, any payments you're making for online gaming, your phone bill. This is a large area of spending that we can focus on, like where we can cut costs in, because a lot of the costs that we find in the entertainment category are sort of like repetitive on a month-to-month basis, or we can reduce them in some way so that they're down to a more manageable level. Next, we have accommodations. This is like your rent, utilities. I've included internet because as post-secondary students, we often need internet to participate in our studies. So that's sort of a necessary component to having those accommodation payments. And then finally, we have sort of travel as a breakdown. This is going to include your transit costs, if you're a vehicle owner, the various costs associated with owning a vehicle, such as gas, car insurance, any payments that you might need to make on your vehicle, and just sort of maintenance over time. So, quick look at some statistics to give us a baseline. The average monthly cost of living for a Canadian undergrad student is $2,845.25 as of a recent study in partnership with Course Compare, which is a Canadian comparison marketplace for education. And that is sort of what you can expect that most of your peers are spending sort of on average on a month-to-month basis. So this gives us a baseline to prepare for as to like where we need to be allocating our money to make sure that we can come up with these payments towards making our education sort of work for us. If you're living in Toronto, you're actually going to be experiencing some of the highest costs for education within the country. When you factor in things such as our transit system and the costs for renting apartments, in addition to just general tuition costs, you're actually paying some of the highest fees in the country, if not the highest. So just note that you can follow the link attached here on the slide to check some different cities around the country to see what maybe you might be more expecting to pay if you're in a different region. Now, some tips. Tracking your spending is critical to your success and a crucial first step in managing your money. Here are a few tips to help you succeed. We've talked about making use of online banking to keep a digital record of your transactions. Review your expenses at the end of each week. Make sure you're planning some time for that and keeping on track of it. It sounds tedious to start, but again, if you have downloaded one of those budget tracking apps, it makes it super easy for you to do so. It'll give you reports at the push of a button, and you've got push notifications giving you regular reminders. So that takes 99% of the work out of it, and I highly recommend getting involved in that. Make note of any consistent or recurring purchases or charges. So this is like monthly subscriptions that you might have to services like Netflix or your Spotify account. And then we can consider ways that you might be able to reduce those fees. Keep all of your receipts is another way. That way you can double check to make sure that you're being charged what you should be, and there's no surprises there. And then again, for those apps, enable spending push notifications on budget tracking apps, because I can't emphasize this enough. When I started using it, it was a game changer for me in that suddenly I was just easily more consciously aware of my spending. And I knew when I was experiencing periods of overspending and could reduce that spending in a short enough amount of time to make a difference. So just a quick reference page here. This is where we sort of cited our sources for the city expenses. And our next presentation is going to be on preparing a budget. So hopefully we'll see you in session 2, and we'll get a start on what you can do now that you've tracked your monthly spending. Quick thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you again soon.